In 1977, a Chicago hospital worker and Philippine native was found dead in her apartment under horrific circumstances. The murder case of Teresita Basa left police searching for clues and leads, but it remained a complete mystery for months. Despite the brutality of the murder and the arson attempt to cover it up, there were no witnesses or leads. All they had to go on were the initials AS. Then, something remarkable happened. The trial of the accused, Allan Showery, made headlines across the nation due to reports of a ghostly intervention. Whether the public believed the tale or not, the concept became a major talking point and sent the case off the rails. Some of the paranormal elements of this unsolved mystery seem too good to be true. However, there are also aspects of the case that don't add up on their own. This video will take you through the details of the murder and the phenomenon that led to a questionable conviction. We'd love to know what you make of the case. Was justice served through a ghostly intervention, or was there something else going on? Leave your comments below, share the video so others can have their say, and don't forget to subscribe for more great content. There are times when a brutal murder case seems as though it's impossible to solve. The unexplained mystery of Teresita Basa certainly looked that way. In fact, there are still more questions than answers about what really happened. In 1977, police found a woman stabbed in her apartment, her body burned to cover any evidence of the crime. At first, the cops felt they had nothing to go on until something extraordinary happened. The result is one of the most fascinating Chicago ghost stories in living memory. In this video, we're going to dive straight into the details of this murder case, present the supernatural elements that shocked the nation, and try to figure out what really happened. Brace yourself, as this one takes an interesting turn. We should start by quickly explaining who Teresita Basa was before getting into the details of her death. Teresita came over to the United States from the Philippines and settled in Chicago. She found work in a local hospital, providing care as a respiratory therapist, and seems to have been well-liked. She became a strong part of the community, but never completely lost her roots or her accent. That part becomes important later. In February 1977, emergency services received a call to an apartment block on Pine Grove Avenue from a maintenance worker. There was a blaze on the 15th floor. Closer inspection led to the discovery of a body at the crime scene. Teresita Basa's burned remains lay beneath a mattress. She was naked and had a stab wound in the chest consistent with a butcher's knife. It was clear to the police that someone had come in, stabbed her, and set fire to the mattress to burn the body and cover their tracks. However, they had little to go on besides the mutilated body. There were no witnesses to a crime and nothing to determine who had been in the apartment. Was Teresita Basa deliberately targeted and murdered in her bed? The use of a butcher knife and absence of clothing suggest a very deliberate, violent act in the middle of the night. Or was there more to the story? At first, there was one small clue to lead the investigation: the initials AS. When searching the apartment and Teresita Basa's possessions for any possible lead, investigators came upon a note in her diary. It simply read, "Get tickets for AS." It was one of those things that could have been completely inconsequential. AS could have been a close friend, and the tickets for a social event. But the use of initials rather than an informal first name is curious. It wasn't a lot to work with, but it was something. Still, the investigation rolled on for 6 months without any clear sign of progress. It seemed as though there was no way forward. That was, until they received another tip-off. What happened next took the case to a whole other dimension, almost literally. If you have subscribed to this channel, you know these cases can take an interesting turn. If you aren't yet, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on more tales like this. Also, give us a like to help us reach more viewers. It wasn't just Teresita's handwriting that moved this case forward. It was also, allegedly, her voice from beyond the grave. We said that this one was going to get weird, and here it is. We're not talking about your typical whispered voice, or some self-proclaimed medium picking up signals from Teresita's spirit. Instead, we are talking about Teresita Basa possessing the body of someone she knew. This is how it reportedly happened. Teresita Basa worked as a respiratory therapist in a Chicago hospital, as did Remy Chua and her surgeon husband, Jose. Remy claimed that Teresita possessed her following her death. She woke in a trance state, talking as Teresita Basa, with an apparent message from beyond the grave. There are three important aspects to this supposed possession by the ghost of Teresita Basa. They are the words spoken, the language used, and the accent. Let's start with the language. Remy spoke in her trance state in Tagalog, which was Teresita's native tongue. Remy Chua was familiar with it, but hardly ever spoke it. Now, as you heard earlier, Teresita Basa retained a strong accent even after living in Chicago for so long. Remy Chua apparently spoke in that same accent, adding weight to the idea that these were Teresita's words and not hers. Then there are the words chosen. She began, "Doctor, I would like to ask for your help," referring to Jose by profession and not by his relationship with Remy. She went on to identify herself as Teresita Basa and claimed that the murderer was still at large. Throughout 3 possessions, police learned enough to believe that AS was Allan Showery. At the time of the murder, Allan Showery was a 32-year-old orderly working in the same hospital as both Teresita Basa and Remy Chua. The nature of his relationship with Teresita led police to believe he was the culprit. Before the murder, Teresita had hired Showery to do some small jobs for her around the house because he was struggling for money. Many believe he was in her apartment to repair her TV before stabbing her and committing arson. What the tickets for AS were remains unclear. Perhaps in addition to helping with his financial situation, she had offered to help obtain these tickets too. The final nail in the coffin for Allan Showery was the issue of some missing jewelry. Showery's pregnant partner received a pearl ring and jade pendant from him for Christmas. Both of these items originally belonged to Allan Showery, a 32-year-old orderly working in the same hospital as both Teresita Basa and Remy Chua. The theory was that Showery stole them while repairing the TV, killed Teresita when she found out, and then set the apartment alight. At first, Allan Showery denied it all, but would later sign a confession. Soon after this, he retracted the confession. This was while the murder case received extensive media coverage for the involvement of a ghost. The trial ended in a mistrial with a deadlocked jury. In the end, despite all of these different confessions, retractions, and issues with the trial, there was a second trial. The judge found Showery guilty on all counts. The jury believed he had robbed Teresita Basa, murdered her in the apartment, and committed arson to cover it up. His sentence was light considering the nature of the situation. He went away for 14 years, but was out in less than 6. He was back out in 1983 and seemingly lived a quiet, crime-free life from then on. This is a big question and one that we won't ever get a definitive answer to. There are 3 ways of looking at this. The first is that Remy Chua became possessed by the spirit of Teresita Basa, who passed on the information from beyond the grave. The second is that Remy had information about Showery and used the possession story to pass that on. The third is that there was some sort of vendetta against Showery and an attempt to frame him. Let's start with the idea of spiritual possession. This all comes down to your belief in the paranormal and those details about the so-called possession. The problem is that we only have her husband as a potentially unreliable witness. Also, it might not have been hard to fake the accent and learn what to say. This leads to the prospect of this being a faked possession to capture the murderer. It is possible that Remy overheard things at work or around the area and sought to pass that on, using the possession as a cover. But why take that approach rather than just go to the police? Reports say that she hated being in the media spotlight, so why create such a newsworthy situation? It's also noteworthy that there are no other reported paranormal incidents in her lifetime. Then there is also the possibility that Remy and her husband framed Showery while using the possession story as cover. This might explain the inconsistencies in the confessions if Showery merely robbed but didn't kill Basa. Dr. Chua insisted that Showery and his wife had never met. But was that true after all working in the same hospital? How did the initials get in the book? We'd love to read your thoughts on the story. Was Showery rightfully convicted following this possession by Teresita Basa? Or was there something a little more sinister and deceptive going on here? Either way, this is a fascinating unsolved mystery we wish we could get to the bottom of. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again for another story from the paranormal soon.